Hello, are you here to debate? Hello?
Sir?
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, you here to debate?
Yes, sir.
All right, what's your name, age, and pronouns, please?
All right, my name is AJ. I'm 20 years old. My pronouns he/him.
All right, AJ, what topic on the board are you calling in to debate about?
I don't know. I was scrolling on my YouTube feed and I've seen this pop up. I guess honestly, I agree with most of the stuff on here, except capitalism is the worst. I mean, I don't yeah. I'm just reading through this list. I don't like. Yeah.
Okay, you don't think capitalism is the worst? What's worse than capitalism?
No, I think capitalism is the best personally. I don't really consider myself a conservative or liberal, anything like that. If anything, it'd be along the lines of, libertarianism. So me personally feel like capitalism is the best. And the reason why people often criticize capitalism is because of government intervention and cronyism, corporations lobbying the government for dumb stuff yeah.
So you believe that privatized ownership is an ethical practice, correct?
Precisely.
Okay, justify that. What makes it ethical for somebody to be able to own land, for instance?
Well, using the homesteading principle, basically private property is when you take a natural resource, combine it with your own labor, your own resources, your own tools, and you create something out of it. That could be for land, such as a farm. That could be applied to things like, I'll just take a guitar, for example. You cut the tree, you found the metal for the strings, you assembled it all together. That's your private property. Nobody else can take that from you. You have, rightful ownership of that, and just scale that across all of society and capitalism.
Okay, so you presupposed a lot of stuff there. Like you just presupposed that I'm asking to tell me why it is ethical to homestead. Why is it ethical that I can find, let's say, a plot of land that nobody is on, and I can claim that land as mine, and then now I own this land? What makes that ethical?
The way you just said that doesn't sound like homesteading to me, because based on what the U.S. government currently does, it's just exactly that. Basically, you have to combine something with your own labor. You have to do something with the land in order for you to actually claim it. You can't just point to some mountain and say, "Oh, I'm the first person to see."
Even if I'm doing something with the land, why does that justify ownership?
Well, how do I articulate this? I guess a better question would be, what would be another way to justify ownership?
I don't think it's possible to justify privatized ownership.
Then what would you suggest?
We abolish private property, and all ownership would become public ownership, save for personal ownership, which would remain personal. But anything that's not personal would be public.
And what do you mean by that? What exactly would you consider public property versus personal property, which in my opinion, I feel like all property is private, not I understand to call it, guys on the left try to make this distinction between personal and private property when.
Well, I don't make this distinction.
Yeah.
Economists make this distinction, right? Marx made this distinction. That's why I distinguish personal from private property. Personal property is anything I use daily in my personal life for my personal use. Private property is anything that's used in the means of production. So anything used in excess of the creation of goods and services. So for instance, if I have a car and I use my car to drive me to and from the store, and I drive to work and I take it out and I do all that, that's my personal car. If I own 6 cars and the other 5 cars are used to run some sort of taxi business, those are now private ownership cars. Those are cars used in the creation of a goods or service versus my car that's used for just my personal life. Now, there can be some overlap. My personal car can be used to like earn money, but it's not, when I like earn money from my car, like doing Uber, I'm still in part of the working class. So it doesn't become private property all of a sudden because I'm not part of the owner class.
All right. So in that situation, right, with the 6 cars, so, you know, we have your own personal car, right? And that's your personal property, using it for, you know, yourself. In order for those 5 cars to become private property, you have to own the cars, no?
You or the company owns the cars.
Mm-hmm.
Companies are private property as well.
I purchased these 6 cars with my own money. And like, you know, I go to the dealership today and I just bought 6 cars, right? Under the terms that I just heard, basically that's your personal property still. I mean, you know, it could be for family members, it could be
unless you use those cars in the production of a good or service. A good or service somebody has to pay for.
If I make money with something, if I'm using my own resources to procure more resources, all of a sudden I don't have rightful ownership of said resources.
Yes, you would have rightful ownership because we live under capitalism. So I wouldn't say you don't have the right to that. I would say your justification.
Well, yeah, you're arguing that we shouldn't have the right to it.
Yes, yeah. The justification for the right to it doesn't hold up or I've not heard a proper justification for the right to own it. Right. So for instance, like let's take housing for instance. If I own a house, right? If I own a house that I live in, that's my personal house. If I own a bunch of rental properties, those are now private property ownership. That's private property. It's now property that I'm using to generate a profit and vice versa. The only reason I'm able to generate a profit off of real estate in this way is because we've commodified a basic need people have, which is housing. Housing is a basic need. Shelter is a basic need. So we've commodified it in a way. And then any property that I purchase to rent out is now property somebody else cannot live in and own without paying me for it. Right? I don't see an ethical justification in saying I can buy up, for instance, a load of property, drive up prices to where people can't purchase, and now they just have to rent from me because there's no other option. I don't see a justification. And you as a staunch libertarian, you would agree that this system is perfectly ethical, that I should be able to, if I wanted to, purchase all the property in an area and rent all of that property out to people with no government interference in the way that I do this.
Okay, so under the current system, I don't like it much either. I feel like it's not free market enough. So under the current system, right, like, for example, BlackRock could just buy a bunch of property and zoning laws and bull crap that we can't really do anything about. That I don't like either. But yeah, what you're describing, if one person, like to say, bought a whole city, that sounds more like an argument for monopolies rather than just being able to buy and own.
Staunch libertarianism has to allow for monopolies. You can't have like a true libertarian system without monopolies. You would welcome.
I'd argue the exact opposite, actually. There's actually never been an instance of a natural monopoly outside of government interference. Pretty much what it boils down to is that every system of, you know, economics has to deal with the principle of scarcity, right? Because the universe is going to provide humanity with its, you know, whims, you know, at a flick of a wrist. So we have, you know, scarce resources. We have to allocate them to, you know, do stuff basically. And this is an argument about which system is the best at, you know, dealing with scarcity. And housing, among many other things, are, you know, subject to supply of law and demand, subject to scarcity. So, yeah.
Wait. I don't think this makes sense. When you're going, there's no monopolies outside of governmental interference, right? There have been plenty of businesses that have just crushed the competition without any form of
enter for a chance to win
government assistance. This exists all over the place, right? Walmart wasn't able to have a monopoly on retail and crush mom and pop businesses because the government interfered and got rid of those mom and pop businesses. They drove them out of business with lower pricing, and they had more capital to do to lower prices and maintain their production until all those businesses went under, so they could then up their prices again after the fact. The government didn't interfere in this to allow Walmart to do this. Walmart, there just weren't any rules against it.
Okay, so this Walmart example, I haven't done a lot of research into because I live in a big city, right? And there's like several different grocery stores around me. We have small stuff, like small mom and pop shops, as you said. We have Walmart, we have Target, we have Kroger, Food Town, or a bunch of stuff, right? So personally, I haven't seen it, but I'll take your word for it.
Let me just let you know. And you can take this as anecdotal if you want, but if you go and look it up, this will be it's the same thing. The reason I know this is what happened with Walmart is because I was alive. I watched as the mom and pop shops in my hometown all closed because Walmart was taking the business, right? Like we saw it happen, right? So this is how monopolies work. If I have a company that is or if I have the money to keep my company afloat longer than you, I can afford to lower prices, drive you out of business, and then up my prices once you're gone. And there's nothing stopping me from doing that unless we have restrictions placed upon us by the government, which is something you as a libertarian would not want.
Now, in this scenario, right, there's nothing stopping, once they raise their prices, nothing stopping from another company coming in and being a competitor as well. There's nothing stopping that.
Yes, there's nothing stopping another monopoly showing up. But whoever has the most money and can weather the storm the longest, or what's going to happen is you're going to get a monopoly cartel, which we have all over the place. Look at internet service providers. There's a reason why there's usually only 2 or 3 in an area, and they very rarely compete.
That's exactly what I want to get into. I'm so glad you said that. So, for example, right, Comcast is one of the biggest internet providers in America, right? And basically, the reason why they're able to be so prolific is specifically because of zoning laws. Oftentimes, especially like rural America, they're like the only service provider around, right? And basically, they lobby the government for patents, for regulations on like radio frequencies and stuff like that, which make it expensive and often impossible for a competitor to come up. Oftentimes, it's illegal for another competitor, like a local competitor, in these rural areas in order to make their own.
So they used their money to extract a monopoly. Now they did it through government services because they found that if they did it that way, they could legislate no competition. However, if there was no government regulating things, what they could do instead, and which is what we saw happen, right? This is what happened with paper publishing in New York back in the early, 1910s, 1912s. All of the paper companies got together and said, "Hey guys, why are we fighting each other and lowering our prices when we could all just raise them and there's no one for these people to go to?" And that's what they did. Right? This is how cartel monopolies work. So yeah, you can say, hey, I don't like government interference in this regard. And I'll agree. I think there are areas that the government interferes that I don't like as well. Right? This like being able to lobby, I think, is one of them. But to say, to vie for a system where the government interferes not at all puts us back into, have you ever researched the meatpacking industry in early New York in like the late early 1900s?
I've heard stuff about it. I think it was, I don't know if it's a poem or a book or something There's
a really famous book that, it's called The Jungle. Upton Sinclair's The Jungle. The conditions in these places, the exploitation of labor, the absolute lack of any sort of standard, because it didn't matter. They didn't need to do that. They literally, all they had to do, shout out to whoever gifted that merch over on Twitch. All they had to do right? All they had to do was whatever they wanted because there were no regulations. Regulations are a good thing if implemented to help people. They're a good thing. But saying that you want to go to like a libertarian system is saying that you want no government interference at all, which we've had before, and that was terrible for everybody.
So I just want to be clear that when I say there's absolutely no regulations, well, I'm okay. Oh, okay. I guess with the way the world currently works, I'm okay. I can settle for government regulations. And when you say for helping people, in my eyes, that's only to protect people's freedom of life, liberty, and property. Government making laws and stuff to protect people's natural rights. I'm okay with that. I feel like that's the only job of the government. Anything beyond that is unnecessary. And this is called that, like the meat industry back in the day. I feel like the reason why that was the case is because the industry really didn't exist. All this stuff was brand new. Factories were relatively new, and so there couldn't have been regulations on an industry that didn't exist. And eventually, with the rise of technology, and we started understanding how to safely do butchering and stuff. We understood how to properly refrigerate things. And once more factories opened up, we have more competition. Ultimately, people are going to want to work in the cleaner, safer, environments. Forcing the companies, not out of the goodness of their hearts, but out of a pure profit motive, they're going to have to eventually adapt and adopt safety regulations on their own. Like I think, like the tech industry, for example, before the invention of USB, every single manufacturer had like their own freaking port. We have a port for printers, port for keyboard, port for mice,
for
and all of the big players in the industry, IBM, Apple, Microsoft, and whatnot, came together. So let's make a new standard. So I don't think that government we can do we can create standards and procedures without government regulation. We don't have to do that, and I feel like that would be a more ethical, and I feel like that's a more ethical way of doing things.
Yeah, but again, this wouldn't be libertarian, right? If you're going staunch, or unless you're not like a staunch libertarianist, if you're going staunch libertarianist, you want the government out of private industry, like altogether. You want no private industry in business, right? And you're saying you're also mentioning that you want a system that protects people's right to property ownership, but you haven't really been able to justify that right to me, other than saying, well, if I produce some level of labor and I mix that labor with some sort of land or thing, like, right, I own that thing. But like, we know that this isn't the case because like, if I go work at Walmart and I produce labor at Walmart, I don't now own Walmart, right? If I go to the beach and I mix some type of my labor with the ocean, I don't now own the ocean. So where's the line? What tells us what type of things can be owned when we mix the labor?
And I love how you just said that. So the beach example, right? If I mix my labor with, I don't know, the sand on the beach, right? Usually the sand is owned by the government or somebody else. But let's just say, I found this beach. If I mix my labor with the sand and to create an obsidian knife, I don't know, right? That doesn't mean I own the sand on the beach. All that means is that I own the obsidian knife.
Yeah, but capitalists want to own the beach. They want to own the beach so they can make more knives. So they purchase the land, right? Because what you're like, the way you're describing is okay. Let's say I strike oil and I use that oil to fuel my car, like by refining it. I don't own the oil. I own the oil that I've refined to put in my car. But that's not how capitalism works. Capitalism would say that I buy the rights to the oil, that we literally have oil rights. You buy the rights to the oil in the ground separate of refining it.
Okay, so that's a really good example. So, and this is actually something I kind of agree with a little bit. So basically, owning the rights to the oil in the ground, I can purchase the rights to the oil in the ground, right? Purchasing it from where exactly?
Well, you would be purchasing it from whoever owns the land currently. But if nobody owns the
Under our
land,
current sy-
if
yeah,
nobody
under
owns
our
the
current
land and you
system,
strike
which is-
oil, then you claim that oil as yours, and now you can sell back the right to that oil. But again,
yeah.
what labor did you put in except like finding the oil? We're now saying that as long as you find something, you own it.
No, yeah, and that I actually agree with you on that. That is not the homesteading principle. That is not ownership. You can't
What's
just
different?
find
What's
something
different
and say,
from it, though?
"Oh, it's mine now." All of a sudden,
Because
you
Locke,
have to.
I assume that you're getting the homestead principle from Locke. Locke would claim that the act of finding it is the labor put into it.
I actually haven't heard of that one. That's a good point. Interesting. Okay.
But again, I'm just still looking for the justification on this. Like, why does me putting in labor over a piece of land mean that I now claim ownership of the land?
It's not necessarily claiming ownership of the land. It's claiming that you own whatever you did to the land, if that makes sense.
Well, if you're claiming that, then nobody would own land, but everybody owns land.
Like,
So
for example,
so this can't be this can't be the same thing and justify your claims, because you acknowledge that people can own land, right?
People can own land once it's combined with labor. Yes.
Okay, so
So,
it
for
would be
example,
about
a farm,
owning the land, not
if
just
you
the
did
not.
something to, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, if I own 12 acres and 10 of those acres are farmland and 2 of them are like just whatever land I want it to be, like I don't even farm on them, it's just 2 acres of land I own. Why do I get to own those other 2 acres? I'm not using them for anything. I'm not producing labor on those 2 acres. I just get to have them.
Under our current system, yes. Now that's an interesting proposal. Those other 2 acres, and I could be wrong, but from what I'm seeing, you don't really have a rightful claim to that. The other 10 acres that you use for the farm, obviously, yeah. Or you build a house upon the land, that that's proper ownership. Those other 2 acres, you can't really say you claim that.
Well, then couldn't we just make the case that instead the way we do the principle is that when work is done on a land, we all collectively own that work, so we all get the benefits from like what you're describing is if I produce labor mixed with this labor being X, we'll say labor is X and the thing is Y. So if I mix X with Y, I should own part of Y, especially the part I work on. Wouldn't this be a justification for like worker-led ownership of basically every industry? Because the workers are the ones producing the labor. Therefore, they should be the ones owning the business, not vice versa. It shouldn't be if I own a construction company and all I do is I hire people to run everything, I just collect my check. Why should I be the one owning that? Like under your homesteading principle, it should be the workers that own that company. It shouldn't be me.
And I'm glad you mentioned that. So imagine if I have a wood company, right? Do my own labor. I procure the wood, right? I cut the wood, getting ready to ship it off, and I hire somebody to transport the wood to another place, right? Just because they did the labor in order to transport the wood doesn't mean they own it. It's still my wood, my resources, and they sign a contract saying that
this is
I
completely
will,
antithetical to everything you said.
This good in exchange for a
AJ,
wage.
This is totally antithetical to what you've been
to.
claiming. This is totally antithetical to what you've been claiming, right? So now it's not about mixing the labor, like, right? If the workers are putting in their labor, right, they should be able to do. But no, the reason why the workers sign a contract with you is because they're selling you their labor. So you become an owner of the workers' labor. But you're not mixing that's not how that's working right here. Like, right? Wouldn't it be more the case that because you have to also remember, I could be a billionaire. I could just be rich and just buy the business as it currently exists and operates. And I still make all the money when I input in no labor, right? So all we're saying now is that it is whoever has the most capital to make the purchase. That's what gives them the right to ownership. But I'm asking you where the justification for that right comes from. You said, well, it comes from the labor you put in. But now we're talking about people that aren't putting in labor, but they still have the right to that ownership. We can't have it both ways.
I think you might have misunderstood me a little bit, and I'm going to say that's my fault. I'm not exactly the best communicator, but when I say that the right to ownership comes from labor, I mean labor and a natural resource, an unclaimed natural resource. And I say claiming, I mean like, in a homesteading way. So basically a tree that, nobody's ever done anything with. I just discovered a tree. And I put my labor into owning the, in order to do stuff with the tree. Yeah.
Wait, I'm following here. I'm following here. But I just have a quick question. If you get that ownership from an owned natural resource,
Bradley's Baddies
would we consider this
song album for $5?
A level of theft?
No, that's just trading. If I barter, that's barter.
Huh?
Okay, hold on. Can you repeat the question? I may have misunderstood you. Hold on.
If you get your asset from an already existed ownership, like you're saying, it's the labor mixed with the land. If that land is unowned, what if it's already owned?
Then that's just trading. If somebody owns a piece
what
of,
if I don't trade for it? What if I just take it?
Homesteaded the land, and they want to sell it to me. It's their property. They have the right to sell their own property.
What if I just take it?
That's theft.
Okay, but what if I have more guns?
That's aggression, which is still theft. That's
so
theft.
Then you would agree that like all ownership of basically everything in the United States is theft based.
90% of it, yeah.
So we should give that all back. You would be for like Landback.
When you say give it back, I don't mean as in like redistributing it. I would imagine it more like, because the way I view things, right? Government claims to territory can be honestly considered abandoned property because they don't have a rightful claim to ownership.
What about all the land that we broke treaties with indigenous tribes and took? There's tons of that.
No. Here's the thing, right? A lot of indigenous tribes, they never really properly homesteaded the land. The only land that they will have a rightful claim to would be like wherever they set their, their huts and stuff.
No. There was land that they had that we signed treaties with them that said, you get to keep your land here and we'll take this land. We then broke those treaties and took the land we said we wouldn't take. Should that land be given back based on your principles of the only land that you can rightfully own is land that was unowned?
The land that they properly owned during the homesteading principle, yeah, I can, agree that they should be given back, assuming, assuming you can prove that your ancestors would have given you this land. I don't think I have a problem with that.
We had signed treaties. That's what I'm saying. We had signed treaties.
The United States government, they've done some fucked up shit. Oh, I don't know if I can curse on the stream. That's my apologies if I can't. But the government has done some bad stuff to indigenous peoples, and I hate them for that too. So I feel like if you can prove your ancestral claims and you can prove that your ancestors would have given you this piece of land,
well, we don't even have to prove. We don't even have to prove the ancestral part. Literally, every major treaty that the United States signed with indigenous tribes, with native nations, the United States broke those and took that land. So wouldn't it be the case that under your principle, we should give all of that land back?
So the government pretty much said, oh, we'll give you this piece of land. And oftentimes the government didn't have claims to the land itself. So we can't just give all of the United States back.
What?
But the land that they actually... Yeah, because like basically what you're saying, right? The government said, okay, we'll sign this treaty. We'll let you have this land that neither of us really have a proper claim to. And, we'll keep our own land. And then they later broke the treaties, which... Yeah, again, the very first part, they gave these Native Americans land and stuff that neither of them directly had a claim to under the homesteading principle.
How would the indigenous tribes who are producing labor to cultivate this land, how would they not have claim to it under the homesteading principle?
If they cultivated in the
literally homesteading.
From what I've researched, and I could be wrong, but from what I've researched, most of them, were nomadic in nature. They were, they didn't really do much in agriculture. They didn't like build civilizations like they did in Mesoamerica, like the Aztecs. They built like entire empires and stuff, right? From what I've understood, the Native Americans in North America and modern day United States, they didn't really do any of these things. They were, nomadic in nature.
No. Most tribes in North America were not nomadic, like at all. They were not nomadic.
Okay, I say North America. I mean, just
yes,
above Mexico.
Yes, they were not They were mostly non-nomadic tribes. They were mostly settled tribes. So again, my question is.
I can agree with you in that. Then they should be given back the land that they settled.
So okay. So you do think that the United States should give back any land that they broke in treaties with these tribes that were not nomadic. The United States should hand that land back over, and that land should actually be owned by. So for instance, if there is land and you own it, right? But that land was founded on treaty land. You agree your land should be given back to the native tribes.
Yeah.
Okay. So that would be basically the equivalent of like 1 billion acres of land, give or take.
Again, when you say that, they didn't homestead that billion acres of land.
Yes, they did.
I mean, simply hunting and doing, hunting on the land isn't really.
They didn't just hunt on the land. They lived on the land. They farmed on the land. They cultivated crops on the land. They would do everything that you would say claims that they were homesteaders.
From what it sounds like, I have to agree with you. I have to do a little bit more research because I really was under the impression that they didn't do all of that. They roamed the land. They didn't settle down. They didn't establish, civilizations and stuff in the lands like they did. Like I'm thinking, when I say thinking of establishing, I'm thinking like, the Aztec Empire and Tenochtitlan and stuff like that. That's what I'm thinking of, but I could be wrong.
Sabrina
I could be
purchased
wrong.
Bradley's Baddies 2023 theme song album
Yeah, no,
for
that is
£3.78.
incorrect.
Sending love from
right.
Wales.
Then I have to concede on you on that one.
Okay. So we give all the land back. No capitalists have any right to the actual land that they currently own and live on. I'm totally fine with that.
All right. Well played.
All right. Good talk.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you guys for watching, and shout out to my YouTube members. Their names appear on the side. Membership starts at $2.99 and gets you access to early videos, uncensored videos, and members-only content. Also, shout out to Tier 4 members, Bamji, Matthew Holloway, Vampy, Kelsey Dooley, Kelsey K, Jake, Marceline, and Yemye. Tier 4 members get to help choose debate topics, and their contributions go a long way to helping me create higher quality content for all of you. Remember to subscribe for your daily dose of leftist debates, and I'll see you in the next video.